This week's feeling of the week is impatience. So, Crimson, what's the definition of impatience?
All right, Lori, the definition of impatience. Impatience isn't the inability to wait, it's the inability to tolerate the discomfort of waiting.
The inability to tolerate the discomfort. This is the perfect feeling for us to talk about because so much of what we're trying to do with the emotional endurance movement is to help people build the tolerance for the discomfort of the challenging feelings, such as impatience, but also anger, sadness, grief, even love, if you can believe it or not. These are all emotions that can be somewhat difficult to tolerate. And really, any emotion can be, depending on your own experience and journey. And a lot of times, instead of tolerating them, we'll shift into emotional dysregulation. We'll avoid them, we'll invalidate them, we'll numb them out, we'll pretend they're not even there. And we'll even maybe sometimes project them out onto other people in order to just not deal with them. And impatience is one of the ones that I think is so important to talk about because when we go back to March of 2020, that very strange time, there were some interesting things that happened to me as a therapist during that time. And one of the biggest ones was that I had a caseload of probably about 25 to 35 people at the time. And I started noticing very clear themes week to week with clients. So, as we were all going through this shared traumatic experience that was COVID and the pandemic, people were having similar kind of emotional experiences playing out because I think developmentally we were all going through something pretty major at the time. And there are some predictable ways that humans handle trauma. And one of the biggest things that came up, I would say the first couple weeks, it was like exciting in a way, not really exciting. Exciting is not the right word, but we were out of routine. We were out of order. We were all at home and there was like a newness to it all. Right. And then about a month after the newness of it all, it got to be very stale and very difficult very fast. And there were two feelings that people consistently could not cope with. The first was boredom, and the second was impatience. These were two feelings that people had not been practicing, they hadn't built up a tolerance to. To your point, Crimson, they were pretty foreign in our world. We've really engineered a lot of those things away. And it was fascinating to me how triggering these feelings really were. Now, the other part of this that was interesting is it wasn't just my clients I was noticing going through this, it was also me, myself, and my family and how we were dealing with these things. And I was super preggo. So the way that I dealt with it is, like I said earlier in the episode, I just kind of had to surrender to, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope me and my baby make it through this alive. I hope I don't have to go give birth on my own. I hope it's going to be okay for my team and my colleagues and for all of us. And I have no control. And so for me, it really led me into a place of having to sit in the lack of clarity, which is where the impatience really started up. When will we know? What will it look like when we know? Will we go back to work soon? Will we ever go back to work? What does it mean? And this feeling impatience has way more bang to it than you think it would. It is a really hard thing to cope with, especially if you're somebody like me who has OCD. You can get into ruminating and repetitive loops when you are stuck in a situation where there's not clear or certain information. And so impatience to me is it's one of those sleeper feelings that we often will prescribe to like children or people that we think are not acting as maturely as they should be as almost an immature emotion. And I would say that we all struggle with impatience when we're confronted with it. And it's just not something that's super present in our life day to day. But when it shows up, you really need to take the advantage to build your tolerance to it.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem is I'm just intolerant to it. And the older you get, the harder the issues get, the bigger the issues get. And you have to get used to it. You can't say, let's build a company and be impatient.
No, you can't. I mean, you can't say I'm going to build any big dream and not stick with the grit and tenacity that it takes to really build and invest.
Right?
With that being said, I will say COVID to me now almost, gosh, I don't know. When did COVID really end? When did we get an end date? See, I think that's the other thing. We were all expecting at the beginning, we all expected there would be a clear end date. And I'm looking back, I'm not even sure that there was a clear end date.
I think it ended for everyone in different times. Like,
Yeah. I will say that now looking back at it, I do think when I am tasked with the feeling of, "Ugh," why I'm so impatient, I just want this resolved right now. I think that whole experience did build a lot of emotional endurance in me for dealing with impatience. So I feel much more equipped now on the other side of it to deal
Oh,
with it. But I was
absolutely.
surprised how it took me and pretty much my whole caseload down at different times between boredom and impatience of just, gosh, these are really hard feelings to cope with. And part of it was because we had atrophied those
Well,
muscles.
and I think because we had moved into a world where impatience was taken, or being patient was no longer required. So it was like the perfect scenario for people to make horrible decisions. How many businesses, and we're seeing it with AI too, big changes. Of course, as an organizational psychology nerd, I was paying attention to how businesses were reopening, decisions they were making, and the lack of patience is definitely quantifiable for many organizations. Impatience of like getting back in the office, or
Yeah.
there was monetary cost to impatience in the pandemic, but there's also the real life human part, which is we were impatient. We wanted our lives back. We wanted what we thought we would have again. And
Yeah.
obviously that never happened. To your point, there's never been any acknowledgement of that. There's never been, oh, we survived this thing. But I would hope that everyone that survived it came out of it with a little bit more tolerance for the impatience that come with the unknown, uncertainty.
I mean, like I said, I know I did, and I hope my caseload did too. And now it's time for the coping skill of the week, which this week it's something a little different. It's bird watching. Now, let's talk about bird watching because I often think that this is a type of coping skill that is taken up by people of a certain age. We get to a certain age, and all of a sudden, bird watching becomes quite fascinating. And so, if you find yourself in that bracket, awesome. If you're not quite there yet, this is what you have to look forward to. Bird watching is a great coping skill because it helps to ground you and to keep you focused on nature and what is happening now. So it's really a big mindfulness practice ultimately. And here's some fun research backed facts about bird watching and your mental health. Your brain likes a feathered scavenger hunt. Searching for birds gently pulls your attention away from worries and towards colors, sounds, movement, and the present moment. Bird encounters may leave a little emotional afterglow. In a study involving 1,200 people, seeing or hearing birds were associated with improved mental well being that lasted beyond the encounter. The association appeared in people both with and without depression. You don't even really have to spot the bird. Experimental research found that listening to bird songs reduced anxiety and paranoid feelings in healthy participants. Birding encourages self fascination. A bird holds your attention without demanding intense concentration. You might get something interesting to follow while overworked parts of your attention system receive a tiny little recess. It turns an ordinary walk into a mission. Instead of thinking, I should exercise, you're wondering, what was that cardinal or that tiny little bluebird? Movement becomes the side effect of curiosity. And bird watching is wonderfully low barrier. You can begin from a window, a sidewalk, a park bench, a live stream, or a backyard. Binoculars are optional, and the National Park Service describes birding as a low cost hobby that can be practiced almost anywhere. It can create connection without demanding constant conversation. Birding groups, identification apps, speeder cameras, and citizen science projects give people something specific to notice and share and connect with without major social interactions for people that find that difficult. A recent research review identified community engagement as one of birding's potential and benefits. And one last fun fact that I have for you is that in order for a bird to sing its bird song, it needs its nervous system to be emotionally regulated. They are unable to sing their bird song when they are dysregulated because, of course, they're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So their bird song is not a necessary tool in that moment. It's also one of the reasons why bird song helps us to regulate our systems because one nervous system recognizes another. So, bird watching, I know it sounds silly, it sounds small, but I swear it is one of my favorite things. And these are my kids' binoculars, but I do have actual binoculars. I actually have a monocular because I have
Nice.
glasses. It's a little bit easier just to have but I love it. I really do. We get a lot of birds in our backyard. So, it's a special part of my day.
That's awesome. I've seen a lot about bird watching, and also we went to the cabin in the woods in Michigan last week. We were on the lake and we had multiple fires, and it took me down these wormholes about how good a fire is for your nervous system, along with water, because looking at water and a fire requires your brain to let go of expectations because it cannot predict the behavior of water or fire. And so if you stare at it long enough, it does break down your nervous system to be less in reactive mode and more responsive. It also makes you more vulnerable, which is probably why natives used it as a gathering around the fire. It's much like alcohol in the sense that there's a perception of vulnerability that comes with it. So sitting around a fire, sitting around water, these are inherently vulnerable settings for human species because they're places of connection. And the reason for that is since our archaic brains, thousands of years ago to now, looking at something without knowing the pattern helps us open up a dimension of vulnerability.
Love it.
Fascinating, huh?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I
So
find it
try some bird
rewarding.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Give it a shot this next week. Let us know how it goes.
Well, I used some really good bird feeder, but then I got scared of the bird flu and I got rid of it. Shoot all the
Wow.
birds away. But
Yeah.
maybe it's time to bring it back.